with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. So meet the team. As I mentioned, this event is hosted by the Fiesta Bowl. So with that, we've got Eric Barkume, Dan Hobaika, and Sherry Perry Gibson are going to be our chairs for the event. Ray Artigue is going to be our board of director liaison. And then again, you've got myself and Nikki. The primary communication that you will receive throughout the year is going to come from Nikki and myself, but you will definitely see these other four members probably in their yellow jackets out at the event. Our partners at Honeywell, we've got Bob Rasmussen joining us again, and then Keith Hughes on the call. He'll be going through the competition and judging aspects of this event. New this year, we're moving over to ASU West campus for 2 days. Carolyn Stark is going to be our primary contact there. And then at ASU Poly, we will still be working with Brittany Martin and Hope Parker. So if you've done this before, the primary mission is the same as last year, and that is to provide a sustainable base for a colony of 24 people in 10 years on Phobos. With that, you will provide a written description of the landing site, sequence of launches, sequence of construction of that base. Now, new to this year is our secondary mission, and again, I want to emphasize that this is different from last year. The secondary mission is going to be to design a team sport to be played in the low-gravity environment of Phobos. This game is to be played outdoors, so it cannot be in an arena or in one of those buildings on the base. With that, we want the students to create the game title, explain the number of players and their roles throughout that sport, and then also we would like them to describe the objective of the game, how it's going to be played, what's required, what equipment is needed, and those teams should also either use a drawing or small scale to help represent that sport to the judges throughout the preliminary competition judging. So how to enter? We've got our application, which is currently open on our website, which is fiestabowl.org/events/aerospace challenge. With that application, each team must submit their team name, their students' names and the coaches' names, the students' grade level, and that's extremely important for this year. T-shirt sizes for the students and coaches, and then it's optional for a team photograph. They're always fun to get. Additionally, we will ask that each student sign an activity release form. Those are on our website as well. Now, how do you apply, or what is needed in that application from the teams? The teams can be made up of 3 to 5 students. The students must be in grades 5th through 8th grade. Now, as I mentioned, that grade level is important and maybe plays a little bit different role this year than in the past. What we are going to be doing this year is we're going to divide the competition into into 2 divisions. The first division, we're calling it the Apollo division, is going to be made up of 5th and 6th graders. The Titan division is going to be the 7th and 8th graders. Now, certainly there can be teams mixed up of students from different grade levels. How that's going to work is whatever the eldest team member, whatever that grade level is, that's what division they're going to participate in. So if there's any questions as far as how that works, we'll answer that a little bit down the road, but when you are filling out those applications and registering, just note that that grade level is probably one of the most important things we're looking for. Another just bit of information and is that the deadline to apply is Friday, November 23rd. We've still got quite a bit of time if you haven't gotten all your teams registered yet. The preliminary competition, as I mentioned earlier, is a little bit different this year. We're excited. We're growing this event due to the tremendous success that it has had. So this year, we're going to be expanding 2 days to ASU West Campus. We're going to start that off Thursday, January 24th and Friday, January 25th. Again, those days are going to be in the ASU West campus. Then we'll come back to, I guess, what is our norm over the past years, and that's Monday, January 28th and Tuesday, January 29th are going to be at the Poly campus. You'll notice there is no Wednesday event there. What we did was, because Wednesday was always a shorter and smaller competition, that's where the expansion came from to the west side the previous week. We will do our best to accommodate your first choice. Obviously, we've now got 4 days with 2 different locations, so we hope that teams will be able to pick and choose their preference, and we'll be able to meet that preference as well. After registration closes November 23rd, we'll be working very hard to notify the teams of their competition date in early December. As far as the preliminary competition schedule, every day the competition will begin at 9 o'clock, and we hope that it'll end around 4 o'clock, if not sooner. Registration is open at 8 a.m., so we encourage the teams to get there early. What that day will include is registration right off the bat, and then we'll do a little welcome and discuss the preliminary competition, and then we will go into our judging. There will be lunch for all the teams, and then at the end we'll recap it with our awards and the announcement of finalists. So ASU West, if you have not been out there, it is in Glendale. It's actually pretty easy to get to. It's just west of the 17 on Thunderbird Road. It's only a couple miles off the 17. Again, very, very accommodable to the north valley as well as the west valley. And honestly, I'm surprised they don't call it ASU Central anymore with how the valley's growing. And then we've got ASU Poly. That is in Mesa, just south of the 202, off of Power and Williams Field. And then at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Keith Hughes from Honeywell, as he's going to go into more details on the contest and the judging. So, Keith.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. Welcome those people who joined since we started this presentation. I believe, Colin, we are recording this event, so if you did arrive a tad late and you're still logging in, you can ask for a recording. Okay, so the project consists of several parts. First of all is a physical model. We limit the size of the base to 1 meter, and the model should fit in an imaginary 80 centimeter cube. Why do we say imaginary? Because once upon a time we had a model where we said should fit within a 1 meter box. And so one team actually built a 1 meter box out of 2x4s, which made it about 45 inches cube. They then took it to the coach and found out it didn't fit and had to chop it in half. So, and another team actually asked how you fit the 1 meter base inside an 80 centimeter cube. The answer is diagonally, of course. So the bottom line is we measure your model. It should be within 80 centimeters in the X, Y, Z dimensions. Emission patch, rather like the patches they produce for the various NASA programs. It should include a team name, the mission number, and the team members' names. It shouldn't exceed 30 centimeters diameter, but it can be any shape that you decide. We encourage you to do a presentation and display board. This will sit at the back of your model. It's very helpful for the judges to get an overview of what you're doing, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Most important is a written report to include how the International Fever Space will operate as a society and evolve as Fever Space is constructed. More of that again in a minute. And expense receipts, your expenses should not exceed $50. Next. Okay, so the project is to construct a scale model of the International Logistics Mission to colonize Phoebus, a moon of Mars. Now, what People tend to think of the scale model as being the most important thing. In reality, it's important for you to illustrate what you're talking about. It's only worth about 5% of your points. So it's something that should be constructed last, not first, and I'll discuss that again in a minute. The base must support a crew of 24 people within 10 years, supported by 9 launches per year from Earth. Now, what we're implying there is you don't have 24 people in the first year. You build up the base over a 10-year period with a number of launches, up to 9 per year, but you do not have to launch 9 per year to get a full complement of 24 in 10 years. So it has to be a sustainable base with minimum support from Earth. Design a team sport to play in low gravity environment. We discussed that. The game is to be played outdoors, not in an enclosed building. You get more points for something which is original than something like hit a golf ball and see how far it goes. Each launch can support 6 people or a cargo module, which is 4.5 meters diameter and a length of 10 meters. There is no mix and match. In other words, no half cargo and no half human astronauts. The maximum cargo weight per launch is 30 metric tons. I don't think we stated here, but there are no return flights. This is a one-way trip for cargo and people for this exercise. Not to say they can't return, but that's not part of this project. Next. Okay, each team should produce a physical 3D model. As we stated, it should be on a base no bigger than 1 meter square and fit within the 80 centimeter cube. The base should include the following. A model and base should not exceed the size requirements. You should have a drawing of the interior design and scale drawings in metric measurements, an indication of time phasing of the base per year, in other words, how the base is going to grow over the 10-year period. Create emission patches we described. You need to give the base a name. And on the display board at the back, I suggest you summarize each category, and I'll give you the categories in a minute, which makes the judging much easier. Next. Okay, as part of the base design requirements, the written report should describe the following instructions. Habitation module, recreation modules, your source of power, your landing and launch sites. It's really landing sites because you're not unlikely to need a launch site. Your emergency plans, what happens if something goes wrong or something breaks. Your food production and storage, and the secondary mission, how that's going to be covered. Now, in this case, the secondary mission is a game, but you have to describe how you're going to play that game. Next. The physiological design factors. You should take into account everything that's necessary for the comfort and existence on board Phoebus. Remember, Phoebus is a very, very low gravity environment. So you have to describe a variety of things, including the air, what you're going to breathe, how you cope with the low gravity, your source of food, how you're going to shield from radiation, where you're going to get your water from, how do you control temperature, the circadian rhythm, make sure you look that up and don't get caught, where you're going to build it on the moon, and how you're going to handle your waste. Next. Okay, so project requirements. Consideration needs to be given to how you'll operate it as a society and how it's going to evolve. So what are the personal qualifications of the astronauts? How are they going to be organized? What's the background culture? Or is it multicultural? What are you going to do for medical care? Are you going to assign jobs, specific jobs to people? Art and aesthetic values, they need to have, it's not just science, but they need to have some recreation and entertainment. What are you going to do for recreation? And what language and how you're going to communicate between each other and with Earth. Next. Okay, written presentation. Describe the logistics of building your international base in a written presentation. All materials used to support this must be in hard copy. A written presentation should address all aspects, both primary and secondary missions. Now, as regards written presentation, we may have it up later, but I'll mention it now. You're going to be judged in 6 judging categories. It's useful to divide your presentation up into those 6 categories so the judge can come along and look at their particular section. Next. Okay, so judging. We're looking at the physical presentation. We're looking at logistics planning. We're looking at base design. We're looking at the physiological factors, the society, primary mission and secondary mission. So these categories there should be spelled out in separate sections of a 3-ring binder to make it easy for everybody. I also suggest you put a synopsis of this on the board that you're going to have at the back, so that a judge looking at base design can look at the board and see a paragraph or 2 just overview of what you've done in terms of base design, etc. It just makes judging a lot easier. Next. Okay, so we have 6 judging categories. We've adjusted it this year. In previous years, we've had a total of 200 points. This year, we've made it 220. So the first 5 are unchanged. Physical presentation, that's essentially your model, but your scale drawings and how you present the data. So it's not purely just the model. 35 points. Design requirements, 30. Physiological factors, 35. Society, 35. Primary mission, 40. And secondary mission, which is new this year, 45 points. We'll also have 2 honorable mention categories and 2 Kids' Choice Awards. So we'll have judges coming around judging the honorable mention, and the kids fill in a form to do the Kids' Choice Awards. Next. So each team of judges will spend about 5 to 7 minutes with each team, hopefully about 8 minutes. We'll see how many teams we have on each day. In that time, they'll be asking questions of the team. They'll be looking at the material, and they'll be looking at the written material and examining your model. The team with the highest score in each division on each day will move to the finals competition. Advancing teams will leave their models and documentation with the competition organizers for safekeeping. Materials being returned on the day of the final competition. So if you're fortunate enough to be a winner, it means you do not have to take your model home. No changes will be able to material, model, or the inclusion of an audiovisual aid if you go to finals. Next step. Next slide. Okay, so because we're now doing it over 4 days, 2 teams each day, 2 4s are 8, we will have 8 teams at the finals competition. Those teams deliver a 10-minute oral presentation to a panel of judges. Those judges are basically people from Honeywell. Prior to the presentation, each judge will look at the models and documentation, awarding each team up to 5 points. Up to 30 points will be awarded for the actual presentation. In the event of a tie, the judges will be asked to rank the 8 finalists, and we have a secret method for doing that, but it's very, very fair. The team with the greatest score and highest rank in their division will be the division champions. And the division champion with the greatest score will win the overall competition. All judges' decisions are final. Next slide. Okay, so just some thoughts. This is really about creativity, originality, and research. That's key. There's no necessarily right answer. There are good answers and better answers, hopefully. The teams can spend up to $50 maximum on their project. Receipts are required. We encourage the use of recycled materials. 3D printers are not permitted throughout the design process. The point of the $50 limit is to make sure that every team and every school, regardless of their financial situation can afford to enter the competition. So we're trying to keep it as a level playing field as possible. That's another reason why the use of computers, tablets, mobile devices in the presentations are not permitted. Obviously, when it comes to preparing the materials for your folders and your drawings, etc., if you have access to computers, feel free to use them, but they're not part of the actual physical competition. So, a few tips. Research your requirements carefully. Make some assumptions, estimate, plan, schedule, and document. State the assumptions. Communicating your thought process to the judges is key. Whatever your assumptions are, it shows you've thought about it. Even if your assumptions are wrong, the judges should give you something for thinking about it and thinking through the problem. So it's always good to do that, and it's a way of planning your results. Provide sufficient detail, a 3-ring binder for each category. Be sure the process makes sense, and please read the guidelines. Next slide. Okay, judging tips. What I forgot to put down here, and I will mention it, is we had a team that came along with a ream of between 500 and 600 sheets of paper that they basically copied from the internet. It was good research, I agree with that, but I remember judging that team. I just opened it up on a random page somewhere in the middle and said, what is this? And they didn't have a clue. So any material that you have, you could be asked at any time what it means. It's good to have the material, it's good to have it for reference, but I encourage you to have a significant amount of material, but 500 pages was an overkill. 20, 30, 40 pages is probably more than enough. 2 pages is way too small an amount. So the contest promotes team building. One of the feedbacks we've found in just about every case is the team finds out, or the entrants find out, that it's a team building exercise. Communication and problem solving, critical decision making, and creativity. So basically, those are the areas that are tested in here. You can go in knowing nothing and come up with a realistic solution if you work together. Also, math, science, social studies, language, and fine arts when you look at how you're going to be constructing the site. As I said, use notice board and tabulated binder. It makes it much easier for the judge. Show your assumptions. I've said partial credits even if they're wrong. So example I've given before and I'll give again is how much oxygen does an astronaut need at rest and at work? And so how much do you have to take with you? Do you have a source of creating oxygen while you're there? Another one I've mentioned before is assume the number of calories each astronaut will consume each day. Calculate the equivalent weight, volume, and storage space. Is it going to be frozen? Is it going to be dried? If it's dried, how much water do you need to rehydrate it, etc. It's a good exercise in a thought process. It's a good exercise in some simple maths and scaling things up and deciding how to schedule your events. Another thing is assumption is how to decide the best way to protect your base from radiation. I could give you probably a dozen examples of solutions we've had in the past, all of which are good ideas in terms of shielding from radiation, but some are more practical and or cost effective and or realistic, shall I say, without giving any clues, than others. So, you know, you'll get credit for thinking about shielding the base from radiation, I should say, but you get more credit if it's a really good idea. And my suggestion is build the model last based on your investigations. I think we come up with the schedule in a second. So next one. So here's the schedule. And I put at the bottom, this is the absolute minimum timeline. I mean, we stretch this from 8 to 10 weeks. The winning team is going to be the team that starts in September and finishes after Christmas. Seriously, if you want to do a good job, these are a guideline to a sequence of events, but I would take more time if you can possibly do it. We have had teams where, for reasons we do not understand, the coach has given the team the project 2 weeks before the event. And it's very sad to see. I mean, they gave it their best effort. Don't get us wrong, but I mean, their model was basically a cardboard box with some aluminum foil wrapped around it. And they had a page and a half of documentation. It's very unfair to the team members to give them too short a period of time. So I would encourage all of you that's involved in this to give them as much time as you possibly can. Next slide. I think it's probably yours, Colin.
Yes, thanks, Keith. Prizes and awards. So all participants will receive a T-shirt, certificate of participation in an event program at the preliminary competition. Finalists will receive a team plaque. 8 teams will receive honorable mentions, as Keith mentioned, 2 each day of each of the preliminaries. And then as well, there will be 8 teams that will receive a Kids' Choice Award, again, 2 each day of the preliminary competition. Now, the prize that everyone's looking forward to is our grand prize, which again this year is going to be a scholarship to the week-long U.S. Space and Rocket Center Space Camp in Huntsville, Alabama. This will include a 5-night adventure where they will be both diving into educational and exhilarating activities for real-world applications of science, technology, engineering, and math. So definitely a phenomenal prize for a STEM event as this. Additionally, we will invite that winning team to an on-field presentation at the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl the following year. And that date is December 28th, 2019, and that's at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. For educator resources, we've got our website. This is going to be the best tool for information. Not only does it have our competition guideline and overview, it's got the dates and suggested timelines. It'll have details, frequently asked questions, but additionally to that, in the competition brochure, there's also the email address, which is aerospace.challenge@fiestabowl.org. If you have any specific questions, you can email me at that email. If it's a competition question, I can certainly answer it. If it's something more detailed that we need to get the judges at Honeywell involved, we can certainly connect them to that. But definitely utilize all of these resources throughout your